The first thing that happened, the thing that made me understand this wasn't just a bad neighbor, wasn't just an annoying paper trail of fines, was when the front door came in like a bad movie. Three men in polo shirts with the Sparrow Creek logo shoved the wood inward, the doorframe splintered, and one of them shoved a clipboard in my face and said, "You got 30 minutes to vacate, Mercer. This is official." I stood there in my slippers, watching coffee steam, and for a second I almost laughed because that's not how adult life is supposed to go, not in a cul-de-sac where you know when your mailman hits the brakes. But then the clipboard man smiled in the way a man smiles when he knows he's won a game he was stacking from the start, and I stopped laughing. My name is Ethan Mercer. I was a prosecutor for 20 years, small office, big cases, the kind of job that teaches you people have a hard time remembering truth unless someone writes it down and puts it in a file. I moved to Sparrow Creek because I wanted quiet cedar trees, a little porch, a mailbox with my name on it that didn't get used for work memos. I did not move here to be the hero of a neighborhood crime drama. But here we are. At first it was petty stuff. A yellow slip about mailbox height. Another about an unauthorized bird feeder that, I learned later, someone had photographed from the street and labeled commercial use. I fixed the mailbox. I took the bird feeder down not because I was afraid, but because I figured it would stop. It didn't. Notices turned into fines. Fines turned into liens. The man who signed everything, Gerald Pike, came to board meetings with a smile and the kind of small talk that ends with someone's house being reassessed. He had a way of saying neighborhood stewardship like it was charity, but the way his hand lingered near the reserve fund spreadsheets made you look twice. We called ourselves the Ridge Line Old Veterans, a retired judge named Hank, my friend Riley who ran a small accounting firm, and Mason, who used to do cyber for the Bureau and never stopped looking for things that weren't meant to be found. We were the kind of people who fixed each other's roofs on Saturdays and brought casseroles to funerals, and when enough of us started getting letters about safety violations, we thought reasonably that something needed checking. What we found was uglier than we expected. There was a folder. Everybody has a folder in these stories, right? The thing you wish you hadn't opened. Mason found it in a USB tucked into a plant pot in the community garden, of all places. It was labeled Special Projects Confidential, and inside were invoices, shell companies, transfers to Crestline Partners, a development outfit that had been sniffing around the Greenbelt for years. The reserves had been siphoned through consulting firms that existed on paper and disappear when you call their numbers. Gerald Pike's signature was on more lines than was reasonable. It started to look like a Ponzi scheme, but smell like something more personal, a scheme to clear old families out so someone could redevelop the creek into condos. When I confronted Pike, he smiled like he'd been waiting for the right moment to explain. "Ethan, it's just business. The neighborhood needs vision." The room felt cold. I remember telling him, evenly, vision doesn't come with forged minutes and forged invoices. He said, "Forged," and the word came at me like he wanted it to sting. He left with the same smile. The smile that comes from someone who believes consequences don't apply to him. The escalation that followed was clinical. A window smashed, not enough to be dramatic, just enough to unsettle. A pickup truck with a Crestline sticker idling overnight at the neighbor's street. A forged complaint that led to a lien on the property of a woman named June, who had lived next door longer than any of us and kept bees in the back. That was the line. When the HOA's actions threatened to take June's house, the Ridgeline stopped being a loose collection of annoyed retirees and became a team with a plan: cameras, bank subpoenas, FOIA requests, old lawyering instincts put to one last use. We caught Vance Cole trying to remove a box from the office at midnight with a flashlight and a look that said he didn't care if anyone saw him. He waved it like a man who wants to be feared, and the camera caught the shake in his hand. We played that footage for a local reporter. You can't believe how fast people act when there are cameras and a story and a deadline. The headline that week was Sotto Voce, what the small town feeds on. HOA president under scrutiny as residents protest. I kept thinking about how small decisions get magnified. An envelope in a mailbox, a shrug at a meeting, the way a smile hides an account number. I kept thinking about June, who sat on her porch in a knit cap and said to me, "We've always looked out for each other here, Ethan. I don't know who they think they are." Her voice made me want to be a better version of myself, the kind of person who doesn't let a neighbor lose their home because somebody decided to play landlord with the books. The big scene came at a community meeting that Pike thought would be theater. He brought his slate. He brought his lawyers. He brought a list of alleged violations and excuses, and he brought the sort of charisma that makes people trade comfort for promises. The room smelled like coffee and bad upholstery. People shifted in their seats. A few nodded to him because they liked the sound of being heard. That was when Mason stood up and, without theatrics, said, "We have the financials." He held up the printouts like a parent holding a school report. He played the audio of a conversation where Pike joked about moving the reserves and laughed. The laughter in the clip was different when you knew what it meant. Pike's face changed in that moment. It's a strange thing to watch a person realize their performance has been filmed. He tried to call it a misunderstanding. He called us troublemakers. He accused us of trying to tarnish a good man. Vance, who'd lost his calm earlier that week in the driveway, leaned forward and hissed something that people didn't repeat on TV, but it was angry enough that a neighbor, small and wiry, stood and walked to the microphone and said, "Threatening people is a crime, Vance, and you can only intimidate me if I let you." The police followed the audit. Pike resigned under pressure, though he tried to make it sound like a noble exit. For the good of the community, he said the same phrasing corrupt people use when they want applause for leaving. Crestline's plan stalled. The liens were placed on hold after an emergency injunction that said the HOA had acted beyond its authority. There were indictments not for the kind of cinematic betrayal you see in movies, but for embezzlement and fraud, the slower, quieter sort that takes time to prove and patience to prosecute. People were fined back. June's name was cleared. Justice, in that small-town way, began to look like paperwork that matched the truth. There's a shot of June hugging Mason like he was kin. There's a shot of Riley, suddenly very pleased with a grill he barely knows how to operate. Hank told a story about the bench he once sat on at the courthouse, and how sometimes the world makes sense in small, stubborn increments. We all laughed because we were alive and because we had kept what mattered. I'll tell you what I learned, and I don't say this like a sermon. I just say it like a neighbor telling another neighbor. Power is often patient, and paperwork is its favorite way to hide. The person who knows how to read the numbers is the person who can see the story behind them. That made the difference. There's an argument to be had about whether we pushed too far, whether Gerald Pike had a life to save too, whether Crestline Partners had a legitimate plan that got ugly, and those are fair conversations. Was Sparrow Creek right to go after Pike in the way we did? Or should we have gone softer, sought mediation, trusted the system more? Would you have left? Would you have fought? Would you have put up with the fines and the quiet theft? Drop a comment. Tell the story of your own neighborhood skirmish. Argue about where accountability starts and vigilance ends. Share this if you think your friends should know what a rogue HOA can look like, and if you think communities can still save themselves when the folks in charge forget who they serve.